Alright, continuing the Anekantavad conversation. Winnable War is his title, and but it's more getting back to this futility connected to determinism, as if somehow change, which we all know it happens. We get old, we change. Change is built into the determinism. It's built into the processes that exist. Geysers change. The very fact that they have a system, that they do something for 2,000 or 3,000 years, and then they do something different because they break and things happen to their guts, and they change. But the very fact that they have a cycle built into them is because of physical facts and a physical circumstance, and those filters are part of what reality is doing all the time by doing its little interacting thing. And all these things are inevitable. They're going to happen the way they're going to happen, and in the sense that we can't change them in any kind of like, I can point my finger and cause change. The change has to be built into the facts, just like rocks falling into the geyser. They're facts, just like a stalagmite lasting for 500 years or something, or 500,000 years, and then it breaks off one day. Change. So it's just so wrong to say that there aren't systems built into this, and I started to explain that with the snowball, and that it's using our brains to polish as a system of combining facts, truths, and with each rotation the facts are rearranged, and they're rearranged, and they're rearranged, and they come to understand things through the associations that are created, the ones that fit together, the puzzle pieces fit together. So it's almost thinking about it like a puzzle. Maybe somebody could invent a machine where you crank the hand, you throw the puzzle pieces in, you crank the handle, and by just rotating puzzle pieces, when they connect together, when two pieces stick together, it pops them into another chamber, and then it keeps putting all the two pieces into a chamber, and then it rotates all the double pieces, and then it makes 4 pieces, and then it makes 8 pieces, and eventually puts the whole puzzle together. Well, that's what the snowball's doing, is it's rolling, is that it's combining what the past is providing as fodder, what complexity is it's achieved. So before I get into that argument, though, there's this absolutist argument that people make. He talks about forever and infinities and all this kind of stuff, and we can sort of know from some of that no matter how big you think the universe is, and no matter how long you think it's going to last or it has existed, the truth is it didn't make anything like us. It didn't make anything much like us that survived very long, because obviously there's no indication of it. It isn't producing any sights or sounds, and they would have had plenty of time to radiate through the universe if the universe could possibly be 30 billion years old, or 60 billion, or 600 billion, or I'm saying whatever bigger numbers you make it, you just make the proof stronger and stronger that this doesn't happen regularly, routinely. Now you could say for every individual unique feature that we have as matter, all of the one-time events, and we don't even know all the one-time events, we just know some of the one-time events, like nucleuses being formed inside cells, like a cell basically swallowing another cell and enslaving it to being the holder of the chromosomes. Only happen once. Neurons only happen once. We know there's no other thinking machine that doesn't rely on neurons, in any kind of elaborate way. No elaborate thinking device on Earth. Neurons are the only way to get there. Neurons are a specific kind of cell, very specific. So this isn't, we have, everything about us has nothing to do with anything you could call routine or inevitable. Everything about it screams rare. Nothing about it screams regular. It's an unusual event times the speed of light squared, in truth. And so for every expansion you do to infinity, I can just add another lightning strike, another improbable event. I can just say you have to get 5 Yahtzee dice to land on top of each other with the number 5. And then I could say 6 dice. No, make it 10 dice. Make it 20 dice. Ain't gonna happen. And that's how rare we could be. And I'm just saying the evidence is kind of obvious that the universe isn't teeming with intelligent life. If life at all. Like I said, we can't even replicate, we can't even manufacture a crude living thing, let alone a complex living thing. A consistent replicator. Anyway, from scratch. Alright. So my argument is that obviously change happens, and when we say we change, we're just really saying that we're the vessel through which change is manifest. Like Martin Luther King didn't change the world. The ideas through which Martin Luther King was exposed, the position he got to in life, the incidental relationships he fell into, those things made Martin Luther King. And those things created a catalyst for all kinds of other interactions that created the thing we call change. And you can go back to slavery and you can find the same kind of, some pieces of the history. Lots of people, unsung heroes. Obviously there's probably a ton of people who were instrumental, who were whispering in Abraham Lincoln's ear that it's okay, this is important, stick to the principle, all that kind of stuff. I know it looks bad, but we get through it, we'll be better for it. That kind of, there might have been all kinds of people instrumental to it going all the way, and the better principle being realized and accepted. But it's changed. The world went from being in one condition to being in a new condition, and it happened because there was mechanisms in place that were just as deterministic as the thing that created the slavery in the first place. The thing being changed was determined, and the thing that's going to change it is determined. And I'm just saying we are smart enough to see change happen. We're smart enough to say that, hey, if I see a bunch of women get together and talk about their kids being killed by drunks, I can surmise that, you know what, that's going to catch on. I might see something happening. I could logically deduce that causes a winner. Okay, that's a good argument. My brain can see that. It can calculate that it makes sense that the universe would be smart enough to figure this out. That it would be able to do 2 + 2 = 4, because it's like mechanical. It's right in front of us all the time that, yes, any 2 things I put together, and I put 2 more things there, I have a thing that is 2 2s, which is 4 1s. And I can understand that relationship. It's real, it's in the universe, and we can describe it. So I would argue that this is what the snowball is doing. It's doing a kind of mathematics. It's doing a kind of logic. It's filtering, and it's saying, well, it's balancing, and it's a scale. So that's the word I underlined, scale. It's figuring out that 2 is very far from 200,000. There's a lot of individual ones in between. It can figure out how far away things are and all kinds of relationships. It can figure out when something melts something and destroys it. It can figure out when something is a half a thing, or when it's a no thing, or when it's a broken thing. All of these are identifiable concepts. And so when the ball's rolling through the 10,000 years of, let's say, human civilization, this is all determined that it would draw these logical relationships. It would identify simple things like dog, pig. The only important thing is brain. Brain equal, therefore treatment equal. Little logical statements that are all around us. So yeah, we ended child labor. We ended slavery. We gave women suffrage. We acknowledged the existence of a competent mind. And an inequitable treatment. The equal sign was broken. There was an unequalness that wasn't justified. And we can see that we got rid of animal cruelty, we got rid of all kinds of bad things, and we did it in a deterministic way, in the sense that as the pieces were rolled, as the balls were rolled, the facts got stuck to each other. Unfairness, slavery. Okay, brutality, badness, harm, child labor. These facts got connected to each other in minds. And then those minds uttered the words. And that's what's happening here. I'm uttering words that my mind has put together. And Benatar did that. Okay, I say zero sum. He says asymmetry. We're saying the same thing. We're using different conceptual words, and we're saying it in a different way, from a different point of view or perspective, but we're describing the same circumstance where, you know, your good doesn't fix his bad, and okay, your good is used up by you enjoying the good. You are having the good because you don't have the bad, and that's the reality here. The bad is the bad, and the good is the absence of it. Anyway, that's the bigger idea. That's one of the stones being rolled here. So when this guy argues that there's something inevitable about life existing, something inevitable about process, something, none of that is true. These are just gross assumptions based on no facts from you. That it isn't part of the determinism that there would be logically realized if you're playing a feudal game, that the things in the feudal game would say, hey, we're playing a feudal game, that's really dumb. That they would figure out that I don't want to sit there and take the risk of creating a tortured organism. That I would not play Frankenstein if somebody gave me the job and said, here's a completely unqualified textbook on how to make a living thing. Go to it. When I know the consequence could be I create a creature that's tormented, and nothing but harm results in its existence. Harm to it and harm to other people. And it's all just bad. And I imposed it because I played a stupid game that didn't need to get played. But I had no real need to do that. I could do a lot of other things. I could read comic books. Why do I need to be making living things? And I'm just saying that is, in my opinion, that argument is as obvious as the pig equal dog. It's as obvious as don't abuse children. It's as obvious as don't own people. All of these things are, in my opinion, quite comparable and quite understandable. Drinking and driving is a silly convenience to risk harming people for, paralyzing them for. Football is an asshole sport. It is not worth paralyzing children for. Have professional badminton or something. It's just stupid. Find something else to bet on. These are just facts. You want to argue that this has no reality, that we somehow don't put facts together over time and realize how to do things more efficiently, more productively, more faster, better. Of course we do. Of course we have. We have every evidence that through history you improve. You have cleaner water to drink, you have better food to eat, you have, it's just a fact. You have heating systems, you have all kinds of, yes, obviously some stuff gets shittier, like they don't seem to be able to make a shingle that can last more than 4 weeks now, but I have to do some roof replacing. 5-year roof, yeah, oh, great. quality shit. Shit being the key word. Alright, so that's the key point I want to make, is that clearly what's happening is associations between concepts, between ideas, between things identified to exist in the world. They're balanced against each other. Our brains realize that we have tipped or distorted the balance with our prejudices or our self-interest. We understand that these things aren't scientific, that these things are cheats, that my child is in fact in no way rationally understood to be better than your child. And if you believe your child is better than everybody else's child, you can rationally understand that's just a bigotry, a grotesque bigotry. It's perfectly emotional understandable. You can't do anything about it. It's like loving a particular kind of woman or something. You know, it's in your nature, but you can understand that it's a bigotry. And that if it really had to do with the welfare of something, whether something was going to be tortured or not, you know, this superficial judgment, which should have nothing to do with the decision, that it should be based on some sort of merit. That's rational. And an intelligent thing, in my opinion, is going to realize that, inevitably. That will be the determinism. So when you say this argument is futile, I'm saying to you, no way. The only thing that has been demonstrated is that human beings are slow fucking learners. I mean, they are dead fucking stupid, because they're always raised by reckless assholes. Children are produced by assholes, generally speaking. People who think they're competent when they're not competent. People who are so arrogant to think, I can drive this bus, and I'm driving it so well I can drive it for somebody else. I'll draw the winning ticket for my child. This kind of bravado is just so fucking unsubstantiated by any big penis. I mean, there's not a big penis in sight, which means a big brain. And these assholes think they're competent. I'm just saying, it's inevitable that they will gain the humility. The facts will keep bludgeoning them. And eventually it's going to seep into more and more minds, because this argument's going to be made by more and more minds. And they're going to keep pointing out how, wow, if you really believe your kids are better than everybody else's kids, you're some fucking retard. If you really believe there's any meaningful difference between a dog and a pig, you're some kind of fucking retard. Yeah. And I think the facts are eventually, the weight of the facts will tip the balance, and change will be in the air. And again, people talk as if this is an uncontrollable problem, reproduction, when we know that most people right now, that is the vast majority of people on planet Earth right now, the vast majority of sexually mature people on this planet right now are having less than replacement population in terms of the number of children they're having. Some 50% have no children. And you're telling me this is a futile argument? That I can't overwhelm the thing that's happening? No, we know that all of the excess population is coming from the bottom 15%. The dumbest and poorest people on Earth are the ones doing all the egg laying, because they're too stupid to see how bad the nest is. They're too stupid to figure out it's full of shit, it's full of maggots, and they have no business in their condition to think they're competent to overwhelm the odds and create a human being that's going to have a life. These arrogant poor fucks are the blight. And I've made this argument, but yes, it's going to be the responsibility of the moderately intelligent to take responsibility and say it's time to tell them they can't keep doing this shit. They got to grow up, okay? Take responsibility, which means no, you're not going to have kids when you're 13, and you're not going to have 13 kids. It's not acceptable behavior. But anyway, so it's nothing about an unsustainable force, like the herd is all saying, breed, 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 breed. It really isn't. And it certainly isn't in behavior. And that's where it really shows, isn't it? Isn't real belief shown in behavior? So I've already got the majority. I just have to get the majority to understand and accept that they really have voted for it. Just admit it. And quit pretending they think it's a great idea for the dumbest and the poorest to be doing all the child rearing. Anyway, so I don't know if I need to play his bit. I'll play some of it just as a courtesy.
Crisis in my early 20s, so maybe it's not hitting me yet, and I'm just prepared. Well, I know we're just pointing fingers here, but I find the herd life denying.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying it's kind of a silly argument to make, because quite obviously that's not what the herd is doing. But as a practical fact, I'm just saying as a general theme, they're supporting and subsidizing the replication of humans. Societies are totally invested in unsustainable growth. They can't break themselves of it. So even if they think it's bad, they have to make it good because they're dependent on it. They want new slaves. It's that sick. It's that psychotic. They need a new slave to pay the bills.
Because, as I say, there's a great deal of fear that is used to motivate the herd. And I say, don't fear anything.
Right. Don't fear irresponsibility. Don't fear making a Frankenstein. I mean, again, it's nihilism completely. It's just be reckless, be stupid. You're a bug. You can't think better than that. Bullshit. Absolute bullshit. If you're not afraid of torture, you're an idiot. Especially the torture of somebody else. I mean, playing with fire when it's your own fingers is one thing. When you're playing with fire in somebody else's house, if you're not afraid of that humiliation or being guilty of that, you just couldn't suck more.
Of a forward-moving vehicle, we can opt to look to the front, but all that we're doing is seeing things for what they really are, and perhaps realizing our own power or realizing our own lack of power.
Well, again, saying both things like that makes any sense. Again, obviously the point is we see the future because we have the past to see it through. If we don't have knowledge of the past, we can't make any sense out of the future. We can't know what 2 + 2 is. We can't know that buildings have to be built a certain structure out of certain materials. We can't know all the logical stuff that we know, and therefore you look at the future and you wouldn't see anything. You wouldn't see a world you could understand. You'd see the world like a possum sees it, for fuck's sake. You'd see it as less than that, because even a possum has some history. You'd see it as a newborn possum or something. You wouldn't be able to navigate it in any kind of rational way. And we can navigate it in the sense that we can know where we need to build a bridge or where we need to build the dike higher because the flood waters might get in. We can know all this stuff. We can see the potential risks and we can moderate against them. We can fight them. We can prevent harm. We can know not to put an abnormal brain in our monster.
Our lack of control over everything. But again, as Epictetus says, you're a slave only when you can't control things that are controllable.
Again, I'm not arguing that we control. I'm arguing that brain is controlled by the acquisition of things like knowledge, wisdom, facts. These things are the thing that give our brain power.
Is existence controllable? Is the brute fact of existence controllable? Can we actually end the conflict, as Mendham seems to believe? Can we actually, let's say the antinatalists win and we suddenly can't have kids anymore because they managed to stop it from happening or whatever, I don't know.
Well, again, I don't have to manage to stop it from happening when already 70% of people have managed to fundamentally stop it from happening in any kind of in the fact that there are already going to, on a scale, on a curve that would mean zero population in a moderate amount of time. So 70% of the people are already breeding at a rate where they will be extinct in less than 1,000 years, let's say. So you're saying I'm against some kind of tremendous, unstoppable tide. Now, how is that fact an unstoppable tide?
Is that going to end existence? Is that going to end sentience? No.
Well, I've already made the argument that we can do all of that. Okay, we know what it's made out of, and for the large mammals, we can impose this decline in population, and for in the end game. Yeah, they'll be swatted like the bugs, quick, fast, get it done.
The wheel of existence has never begun turning. It's never going to stop.
Okay, says he. So he's saying the wheel of existence never began. Well, we kind of know that on planet Earth that's not the truth. The DNA molecule was made here. The DNA molecule evolved here. It had a beginning, a specific beginning, and you can say this wheel was... it always turns the same way. It doesn't. The wheel that made us did insanely bizarre, perfect storm moves to get where it got. It's like me pushing a wheel, a bicycle tire, and having it spell my name just by gravity and torque alone. Quite unlikely.
Time doesn't work like that, in my opinion. There's no before and after.
All right. Well, see, again, that's what I can only request, but there's just no point. As soon as you say there's no before and after, you just break the whole concept of logic and acquisition of knowledge. And so, what's the point of having the conversation? It's fundamental to what I understand reality to be, and there really just can't. What's the point of it's an insanely, incredibly extraordinary claim you're making. You might as well just say, I believe underdog really exists, and there's super energy pills. And, all we have to do is make the super energy pills, and everything will be fine, because then we can build tall buildings in, 14 seconds.
Existence simply exists. It just, even we don't know what existence is. We don't know what...
All right, again, you say we don't. I'm quite confident what it is. It's a biological function, brain functions, consciousness. It's in fact an illusion, but one hell of an illusion. Like the only illusion that matters. The kind of funny thing is that you would kind of expect that if you look at the material universe, there's almost nothing to make value out of. So it would almost make sense that value would be something totally synthetic, totally a byproduct of an arrangement, not actual matter. Because it's foreign to actual matter. The universe doesn't have value in it. Value only exists in the arrangement of matter. And that's sort of the irony here, is the universe is inert. And it's just our arrangement that made this mistake of creating value.
What it means to actually exist, we don't know what it means to actually be sentient. We don't know what consciousness is.
Well, again, you keep saying that I must agree with this stuff because you say we, as if you know what all science believes or what all has been demonstrated by evidence. And I'm saying there's plenty of evidence about what this stuff is, and there's been plenty of conversations about it, and they're perfectly reasonable speculations about it. And yes, maybe we don't have any certainties, but we have a general idea. Okay, the Earth is fucking a sphere, and it's orbiting the sun, and that's pretty reliable shit. And the fact that brains create consciousness is a pretty reliable statement.
But consciousness is, and existence is. People who say, okay, we stop having children, we've moved towards ending consciousness. I want you to demonstrate that. I
don't have to demonstrate it. I really don't. You're the one who has to demonstrate it exists in this bottle. You have to demonstrate where it exists anywhere else. How it can manifest in anything else. So, and if you claim it already exists, and this thing is already doing feeling, and it's horny, and it's desire stuff, and it's having an active and interesting life, I'm going to argue it's a bizarre and extraordinary claim. You might as well be telling me I have to explain, Sasquatch. It's just pseudo philosophy and pseudoscience and pseudo arguments from the fallacy of we. There's no we here. There's you making a claim.
To show how that is going to be the case. It's all based on faith. It's all based on...
Well, again, it's not. It's based on 10,000 years of acquisition of knowledge. Faith is when they thought Thor made the thunder. That was based on a faith, because the evidence was non-existent. The physical evidence, the rational evidence. All there was a story somebody made up.
Ideas that consciousness is an emergent property of the physical universe, which the physical universe, to accept it as it is, even goes against the faith. It flies in the face of what we believe to be hard science.
Well, again, you keep saying all this stuff, and I'm saying I find that the facts add up to exactly the opposite. It just gets more and more secure as a statement with each acquired bit of knowledge. The fact that consciousness is contained in brains becomes more and more certain. Your whole identity is contained in this brain. I stick one little rod in here and I stir it up a little tiny bit and my whole personality changes, for fuck's sake. My entire identity is fundamentally altered. Clearly, it's in there. That's where my identity is.
And I've spouted in a million videos why I think that way.
Well, you haven't done it in any kind of convincing way, quite obviously. And again, this is one of those things where I'm just going to argue that it just changes the subject then. As soon as you use this as an out, well, the subject's almost over, right? Because you're talking about a futility based on your assumptions, not popular assumptions, not assumptions that if I interrogated anybody who says what you say, they don't give me any great answers. They say God says so. Well, that's not an answer. I know that to be fallacious.
You're going to stop existence. Let's just say that life just was this random chance in 100 skillion years, eons, whatever you want to call it. Take a Lovecraftian view of time. We're not talking about eons, we're talking about millions of eons. That schema has forever.
Again, and I would argue if that forever existed, then there would be people who would be forever more advanced than us, and they would have forever more physical control of the universe, and their footprints would be all over it. So clearly this isn't going on all over the universe. Fact one. Fact two, who cares? What does it have to do with the fact that we don't have anywhere to go? We are an animal organism with a silly little game to play. Desire and chase. There's nothing else going on. There's no rational destiny for that machine. The whole body exists to be a mechanism to protect and aggressively cause the intersection of eggs and sperm. The entire mechanism is built to do that. My every piece of my body is a slave to that agenda. That's why it exists.
Forever. It has infinite time and infinite space in which to attempt.
Right, and I can, and the complexity of the 4 billion years that got to us can have an infinite amount of improbability. No rule against that.
Replicate itself, or in which to not even attempt, but just in the randomness of existence, the randomness of, as they say, the universing, just keeps going on and on and on. response.
Right, and it has no material component that is in torture. It has no material component of value. There's nothing of value in the universe. The only thing of value is a relationship between electricity and chemistry in a neural network called a brain, a conscious living brain. That's the only place value is taking place, in a projection room of the mind.
And on. You can't stop those.
All right, well, again, you say so. So I'm clearly saying there's nothing permanent about life. It will be exterminated by the universe. It will be exterminated by this solar system. And we won't even get out of the solar system in any substantial way. That's the destiny. The virus isn't going anywhere, and it has nowhere to go even if it got loose.
Wheel from turning. And what really is, as I say, I can't see this other than a profession of faith when people say we can actually make a difference.
Well, again, so there you go. It's faith to say we made it. If people make a difference, if they stop slavery, it was a matter of faith. It wasn't faith, it was logic, it was reasoning, it was persuasion, and well, in that case it required the war. But the right side did win.
We can. Show me. Show me.
Anesthesia. I mean, I can give you 5 million examples of that progressive change created by intent, objective success.
I really want to see it.
I mean, identifying a problem and solving it clearly, not complicated. That creates change. Identify, solve.
The conflict has to be ended somehow. That assumes that it can be ended.
It doesn't assume it. I made arguments describing how it can be ended, and clearly, for 70% of the humans, ending it is no problem. They're doing it voluntarily without even being asked.
Winning has to happen. How are you going to win?
I'm going to make arguments to those 70% who I'm going to explain that maybe your philosophy should match your behavior. Maybe you should acknowledge that the reason why you don't have kids is because you understand it's just too dangerous to play with. It's not something incompetent humans should be doing.
How do you win anything in a deterministic universe?
Again, mothers against drunk driving. That's how you do it. Martin Luther King. That's how you do it. It happens every frickin' day. Problems are solved. Every day.
I simply can't see it that way.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry then. I mean, again, if you're going to deny the existence of progressive change in the world, then there's just, what's to talk about? It really is just silly. In my opinion, it's silly.
For there to be a third-person perspective on things, as Pyro pointed out in his previous, or in the video we referenced just a while back, in order for a third-person perspective to even exist, there first has to be a first-person perspective.
Exactly. Yeah. And where was that denied? Where was that even part of the argument? How does that have anything to do with it? The understanding of Pirro's very clearly stated is that it's progressive. The smart thing has the third-person perspective. The dumb thing has the first-person perspective. That's the clear implications of his statement, so don't try to pervert it and say it's evidence for your argument. He wasn't saying third-person perspective is just the same as first-person perspective. No, he's saying this third-person perspective requires the acquisition of information.
There has to be something observing that which is observed. It is kind of necessary before you can have a third-person perspective on anything. First.
Well, again, straw man. I mean, where did I argue that you didn't need to have a first person? Where did I ever argue the gorilla doesn't exist? I've argued exactly the opposite. I've continually argued to you that there's a distinction between what my biology is telling me to feel and what my knowledge base is telling me to think.
This person is necessary. And it's that first person perspective that creates anything that we can even use or as a means of analyzing the third person perspective or even having one.
Well, again, they're not incompatible perspectives in any other way than the fact that the third person perspective is going to make it possible for you to see your reflection and see your asshole. You'll see your asshole and realize, oh, I got to do something about that.
If somebody is positing the view that existence can be tampered with, one way or another, I want to hear your hypothesis.
Well, I think it's silly to talk about as existence, so I mean that's just silly. Material exists in forms. So if you're going to tell me that I'm positing that you can't annihilate a form, I can give you tons of examples of millions of species that don't exist anymore. Their existence is over. There's no dodo birds. They're done. They're gone. They're over. They're terminated. They're finished. They're stopped. Forever and ever and ever, they will not exist.
If people think that in a deterministic universe you can somehow fundamentally alter things, you can fundamentally alter the process of necessity.
Again, where's the necessity of the Tyrannosaurus was altered and terminated. This is a moot conversation by fact alone. There's millions of facts. I can give you millions of examples of extinct species on Earth. And that's all we are, is a species. It can go extinct. Just as every other species with neurology can go extinct. Nothing impossible about that.
If you can alter it, it isn't necessity, is it?
So again, I never claimed it was necessity. So again, you're the one claiming that the world always stayed exactly the same, and we're still living on whatever, Eucantia. Eucantia. Kind of goes with your name, Eucantia. No, we're not. The world changed. Facts have been acquired.
If you can change an outcome, it's not determined, is it?
Well, as I stated, I have made repeated arguments about the process of change, and change is just as determined as the thing it's changing.
Again, do your best. Time has forever in which to change what you've attempted to do.
Again, some vague notion that it's going to bring the dodo back. No evidence that it's going to do that. The Tyrannosaurus, you say, will roam the universe again. And you have zero evidence of that fact. Stated as you can't stop the Tyrannosaurus. They're going to own you in the end. They'll be back. They'll be back. They'll always come back. No, they won't. Anyway. Till next time and such.